The rain on Pila 7 was not like Earth's rain. It fell in thick, gray sheets, a slow, constant drizzle of silicone suspension and cold water that coated everything in a slippery, shimmering paste. It muffled sound and bent light, turning the landscape into a blur of dark greens and deep purples. Kim Jun moved through it without hurry. His boots, heavy and magnetized, sank into the soft ground with each step. He was a man built for solid things: rock, metal, the weight of a pack on his shoulders. At 48, his black hair was streaked with early gray, and his face held the quiet lines of a man who spent more time thinking than talking. He wore the standard-issue environmental suit of a freelance terraforming surveyor, but the way he carried himself spoke of a different training, a different life. He was checking a sensor node, its lights blinking a steady blue through the murk. The job was simple, quiet, perfect. The guild had contracted him for a standard pre-terraforming mineralogical survey. Map the deposits, note any hazards, leave. For 6 months, he had worked alone. Then the Crystalline Union sent an observer. She stood a few meters away, a slender figure encased in a suit of pearlescent material that seemed to repel the grime. Li Yuna. Her face, visible through her clear helmet, was calm, with large, dark eyes that observed everything and gave nothing away. Her people valued emotional control above all. The Accord, the galaxy's great book of laws, was their scripture, and she was here to ensure the clumsy humans did not accidentally desecrate it by, say, drilling into a primordial fossil bed or disturbing a sacred silicon formation. Node 7 is stable. Jun's voice was a low rumble in their shared comms channel. Spectrometer shows expected iron and selenium layers. Nothing unexpected. Yuna gave a single, graceful nod. Her voice, when she replied, was clear and soft, like a bell in still air. The consistency is noted. Your efficiency is adequate. It was not a compliment. It was a data point. Jun had learned that in their weeks together. He didn't mind. He preferred data points to conversation. Conversation often led to questions about the past. We should move to the next grid point, Yuna suggested. The atmospheric density is increasing. This precipitation may turn acidic. Jun just grunted in agreement, hefting his scanner pack. They trudged uphill, the sucking mud trying to claim their boots with every step. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, just empty. He was a closed book. She was a blank page. The storm grew worse. The gray light faded into a deep twilight, and the gentle drizzle became a driving, horizontal spray. Alerts chimed on their wrist units simultaneously. Shelter protocol, Yuna stated, her calm unwavering. There is a geological formation 1.2 kilometers east. A cave system. It is registered as inert. Lead the way, Jun said. Yuna moved with an unerring sense of direction, her suit's navigation system projecting a faint path only she could see. Jun followed, his own instincts keeping pace with her technology. The cave mouth was a dark slit in a cliff of layered rock. They ducked inside, the sudden absence of the hammering rain a shock to the senses. The only sound was the drip of water from the ceiling and the low hum of their suit environmental systems. Jun activated his helmet lamp, the beam cutting through the gloom. The cave was large, its walls smooth and striated. It was, as Yuna said, inert. No life signs, no unusual energy readings. Just cold, wet stone. We will remain until the storm passes. Approximately 4 hours, Yuna said, already finding a dry ledge to sit on. She did not remove her helmet. Jun wandered deeper into the cave, his scanner out of habit more than purpose. The beam of his light played over the walls. The mineralogical readout on his wrist screen scrolled familiar data. Basalt, traces of copper, common silicates. Standard planetary crust. He was about to turn back when a faint, almost ghostly echo pinged on his deep layer scanner that he stopped. The ping came again, not from the walls, from beneath the floor. Frowning, he adjusted the scanner's frequency, dialing up the gain. The readout fizzed with static, then resolved. A composite alloy signature, deep, very deep, and old. It was not a natural formation. The pattern was too regular, too layered. It was manufactured. LSSI, he called, his voice sharper than he intended. Yuna was at his side in moments, her own scanner already active. What have you found? Metals. 30 meters down. Not on the survey charts. He handed her the data pad. The readout glowed in the dark cave, painting her placid face in hues of blue and green. Her eyes scanned the information. The signature is anomalous. It does not match any union or known human metallurgical profiles in the database. A slight frown touched her brow. It is likely a fragment from a pre-Accord stellar event. A comet's core. We should log its location and exit. Disturbing unknown archaeological layers is prohibited under Accord Annex. It's not a comet core, June interrupted, his veteran's mind piecing together the density readings, the layering. The density distribution is all wrong. It's hollow in places, compartmentalized. He looked at her, his eyes hard in the lamplight. That's a hull. A ship's hull. The word hull hung in the damp cave air. Yuna's expression did not change, but her posture grew very still. She looked from the scanner's screen to June's face, searching for a sign of a joke. She found none. His eyes were fixed on the readout, seeing something she could not. That is not possible, she said, her voice carefully measured. Pilus 7 is a protected pre-terraforming zone. No flight logs, no crash records exist for this sector for over 5,000 standard cycles. Your scanner must be echoing off a dense mineral node. June shook his head. He tapped the screen, highlighting a specific data cluster. See this? Titanium composite, woven with a carbon filament. That's deliberate engineering. And here, he pointed to another spike. This is degraded power cell radiation. Old, very old, but not natural. He looked at her. My equipment is calibrated. This is a ship. A conflict played out behind Yuna's dark eyes. Her training, the entire foundation of the Accord, was to observe, log, and avoid interference. Discovery was for authorized archaeological teams, not for surveyors in a rainstorm. Our mandate is mineral survey, she stated firmly. We do not have clearance for xenological excavation. To proceed would be a violation. We must seal the cave and report the finding to the Union Oversight Committee. June understood the rules. He had spent years living under them. But he also knew the feel of a mystery, a wrongness in the data. He had felt it before, long ago, in the silence before an ambush. This cave felt like that silence. The Oversight Committee will take cycles to issue a permit, he said, keeping his tone neutral. By then, the next terraforming phase might begin. They'll melt this whole mountain range for water. Whatever's down there will be slag. He met her gaze. We're here now. We have the tools. A simple borescope camera. We look, we record, we give them better data than a seismic echo. Yuna was silent for a long time. The only sound was the distant howl of the wind at the cave mouth. Her duty was clear. Yet, a sliver of something else, a pure, scholarly curiosity she usually kept locked away, pricked at her. A vessel from before the Accord? It was a piece of history, a truth waiting in the dark. To walk away felt like a different kind of violation. A visual scan only, she finally said, her words precise. No physical retrieval. No disturbance of the surrounding strata. We drill a 1-centimeter bore for a fiber optic line. We record what we see. Then we leave and file the report. This is the limit of the action. June gave a single nod. Visual only. He worked with a focused efficiency, unpacking the laser drill from his kit. It was a tool for taking core samples, not for archaeology. Yuna watched his hands, noting the sure, calm movements. There was no hesitation, no fumbling. He positioned the drill over the spot where the scanner's readings were strongest, on a flat section of the cave floor. The whine of the drill was high and sharp in the enclosed space, cutting through the rock with a smell of ozone and vaporized stone that it took 20 minutes to bore through 30 meters of solid rock. June attached the thin, flexible line of the borescope. Its camera tip was no bigger than a grain of rice, equipped with a faint light. He handed the viewer screen to Yuna. You should do it. You're the observer. She took the small screen. Her heart, for the first time since landing on this wet rock, beat a little faster. She fed the line down into the dark, narrow hole. The screen showed a blur of passing rock strata, then a sudden, shocking emptiness. The camera tip emerged into an open space. Yuna adjusted the focus. The image cleared. They were looking into a cavern larger than the one they stood in. And there, canted on its side, partly crushed by the rock fall that had buried it millennia ago, was a ship. It was like nothing she had ever seen. Union ships were smooth, elegant, designed for harmony with stellar winds. Human ships were blocky and practical. This was something else. Its lines were jagged, aggressive. Even covered in rock dust and corrosion, the angles looked sharp, meant to cut. Panels of dark metal were arranged in overlapping scales, like armor. Along its broken flank, she could see the stubby, recessed housings of what could only be weapon mounts. By the accord, Yuna breathed, her professional composure cracking for a second. June said nothing. He stared over her shoulder at the screen, his face like stone. He didn't see a mysterious archaeological find. He saw a combat vessel. He recognized the reinforced structural braces around what was left of the engine nacelle, built to take a hit and keep going. He saw the configuration of the shattered viewports, designed for maximum field of fire, not for observation. "It's a warship," he said, the word flat and heavy. Yuna flinched as if struck. "Do not label it so freely. We do not know its purpose. It may have been a defensive patrol craft." June pointed a blunt finger at the screen, zooming in on a section of the hull where some markings were still visible. The symbols were sharp, angular slashes of paint or etchings. They were not words. They looked like warnings or maybe kill marks. "Defensive craft don't paint their hulls like that," he said, his voice low. "And look at the armor slope. That's for deflecting incoming fire from the front, from an enemy it was charging towards." He finally looked at her, and in his eyes she saw a deep, old knowing that chilled her. This wasn't here to keep the peace. This was here to break things. For a long minute, the only sound in the cave was the faint hum of the viewer's screen and the rasp of their own breathing. The image of the dark, armored ship filled the small display, a silent, jagged truth buried under a mountain. Yuna finally broke the stillness. Her voice had lost its perfect, bell-like quality. It was tight, controlled with obvious effort. "We have our visual record. The parameters of our limited action are satisfied." She began to retract the borescope line, her movements quick and precise. "We should get a sample of those markings," June said, his eyes still fixed on the screen as the image of the ship began to pull away. "For identification. Could be a faction the Union has no record of." "No." The word was sharp, final. Yuna powered off the viewer, plunging the cave back into the gloom of their helmet lamps. "Our mandate was observation. Physical sampling is a clear violation of protocol. We are leaving now to file our report." June could feel the shift. Her curiosity had been burned away by what she had seen, replaced by something colder. Fear. Not fear of him or of the cave, but a deeper procedural fear. He had seen it before in young officers facing something their training manuals didn't cover. "All right," he said, raising his hands slightly in a placating gesture. He began packing the drill. "We'll report it." Yuna was already moving towards the cave entrance, her scanner clutched tightly. The storm outside had not lessened. The rain still fell in a relentless gray curtain. They stepped back out into the downpour. The walk back to their surface transport, a six-wheeled, pressurized crawler, was silent and tense. She did not speak once inside, busying herself with her data pad, compiling the official report with rigid focus. June sat in the driver's seat, watching the rain slide down the windshield. The image of the ship was seared into his mind. The weapon mounts, the armor. It wasn't just any warship. Its design was offensive, meant to project terror. He knew that look. The memories it stirred were old and dark, from a time he never spoke about. Back at the modular base camp, a set of connected pods on stilts against the mud, the silence continued. Yuna retired to her small personal pod, likely to send a preliminary transmission to her Union superiors. June stayed in the common area, supposedly checking his equipment logs. Hours passed. The storm roared. He couldn't shake the feeling. It was a veteran's itch, a sense that the battlefield was not yet behind him. Near midnight, he saw a soft light still glowing from the seam under Yuna's pod door. He walked over and knocked gently. There was a pause. Enter. She was seated at her small desk, the data pad before her. On its screen was not the report form, but the high-resolution image of the ship's angular markings. Her face, illuminated by the blue glow, was pale. She had not sent the report. I was analyzing the markings, she said, her voice hollow. To be thorough. June nodded, saying nothing. He waited. Her finger hovered over the pad. There is a secondary data channel. In some ancient vessels. A low-power emergency beacon, sometimes with a final log. It is a long-range scan protocol. Mostly it finds nothing but static. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and conflicted. It is a non-invasive scan. It does not require a physical link. June understood. She needed to know, but she couldn't cross the line alone. She needed him to be complicit or at least present. Do it, he said quietly. Her fingers flew across the screen, accessing deep-level Union archival tools. She directed a focused datapole scanner towards the coordinates of the wreck, tuning it to listen for the oldest, most fragmented carrier waves. The pad hissed with static, a white noise that filled the small pod. Then, a voice.it was not a voice of flesh, but a dry, digital rasp, translated automatically by the pad. It spoke in a language the database barely recognized, stitching together meaning from syntactic ruins. Population centers on the third continent remain. Fleet command orders saturation. Remove the will. Remove the future. Burn the seed. The words were cold, logical, and monstrous. Yuna's hand went to her mouth. The static crackled again. A new voice, frantic, screaming over alarms. They are everywhere. The small craft, they are not fighting the fleet, they are targeting the orbital farms. Life support is. The transmission dissolved into a scream of tearing metal and then a choked, final silence that a final log entry played. The voice, now eerily calm, resigned. Primary engines lost. Core containment failing. We have broken their sky. They have broken our home. There are no winners here. Only the end. Crashing. Into the dark. Silence returned, heavier than before. Yuna stared at the data pad as if it were a poisonous thing. The clinical words described a nightmare. The deliberate targeting of food sources, of civilian habitats, of a world's ability to sustain life. It wasn't just a battle. It was a strategy of erasure. June listened, his jaw tight. He heard the tactics he had been taught to fear, the unthinkable strategies of a war where surrender was not an option. The quiet war had whispers of this. He had seen the scorched planets afterward. Yuna slowly turned to look at him. The calm, observant xenoarchaeologist was gone. In her place was a woman whose understanding of the universe had just fractured. Her eyes were filled with a horror that was not just about the audio logs. It was the horror of comprehending something she had been taught was incomprehensible. June pointed at the frozen image of the ship's markings on the screen, then at the audio log's source code. They weren't just fighting, he said, his voice gravelly. They were trying to delete an entire people, to make sure no one was left to remember. That's what those tactics are for. Yuna looked from him to the pad and back to him. The color drained completely from her face. The truth of it, the sheer, calculated evil of it, crashed into the peaceful, orderly world she believed in. Her lips moved, but no sound came at first. When it did, it was a whisper so faint it was almost lost in the hum of the pod's heater. It was not a rule. It was a terrified, personal realization. That's prohibited. The word prohibited echoed in the small, warm pod, but it sounded all wrong. It wasn't the sharp tone of a rule being stated. It was the shaky whisper of a child describing a monster under the bed. Yuna wasn't telling June to stop. She was finally seeing the monster herself. He understood immediately. The chill that had been in his bones since he saw the wreck now spread to his core. It wasn't just that this kind of war was against the rules. It was that the rules existed because the galaxy had forgotten this could happen. They hadn't made it illegal. They had made it unthinkable. They had buried the memory so deep that finding it felt like breaking a law of nature. "UNSSI," he said, keeping his voice low and calm, the way he would talk to a spooked civilian in a war zone. "What does prohibited mean in your Union texts?" "Exactly." She blinked, pulling her gaze from the horrifying data pad with great effort. "Article 1 of the Galactic Accord," she recited by rote, her voice hollow. "The seeking of or act of species-level annihilation is the highest crime. All records, all methodologies, all discourse pertaining to it are sealed. To preserve galactic peace through ensured ignorance." The last part came out newly bitter. June felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Ensured ignorance. His own memories, the dark, sharp pieces of his past, were not just painful, they were contraband. The quiet war wasn't quietly classified. It was quietly erased. His own government had agreed to this. They had let the Union scrub the records and likely scrub the minds of the soldiers who fought it. He suddenly remembered the fuzzy, hospital-white days after his discharge. The gaps in his memory he'd blamed on trauma. "They did it to us," he said, more to himself than to her. "After our war. The one we never talk about. Your people. They cleaned it up. Made us forget the details." Una nodded slowly, the horror dawning into a wider, more terrible understanding. "The quiet war. It is a footnote. A minor border conflict. Resolved. It is the only war in the galactic records for 7,000 cycles. But if you fought in it, and if this," she gestured to the ship on her screen, "is from a war before the Accord, then the knowledge, the how of it has broken quarantine twice. Once with your people, and once long ago with the species that built that ship." June looked at her. The species that lost. The implication hung in the air. The species that lost a war like that wouldn't just be defeated. They would be gone. Truly gone. No history, no descendants, just silent planets and wreckage buried under mountains. An alert chimed softly on Una's data pad, separate from the archaeological files. It was a Union priority channel. Her eyes scanned the notification, and her already pale face went ashen. "A deep-scan patrol vessel," she whispered. "The Harmonious Inquiry. It has adjusted its course. It is coming here. ETA, 6 hours. "Why?" June asked, though he already knew. "My initial sensor pinged to the Central Archive," she said, her voice full of self-recrimination. "When I scanned the alloy signature, it was flagged, not by an archaeological board but by a compliance bureau, a secret one. They think we've just stumbled on a fossil bed. They're coming to contain the site." She looked at him, her eyes wide with a new fear. "They will scan us. They will find the audio logs in my pad's cache. They will find the images. And then," June pressed, though he knew this too, "and then they will enforce Article 1, she said. The clinical tone was back, but it was now laced with terror. "They will sanitize the site with plasma drills. And they will sanitize us. Neural realignment. To protect galactic peace." She swallowed hard. "They will take the memory. They will take everything we saw, everything we heard. They will leave the ghosts but burn the facts." The veteran realized this wasn't about getting in trouble. This was about being erased. His last true memory of his war, the understanding of what he had really been a part of, would be scraped from his mind like mud from a boot. He would go back to being a quiet, hollow man, haunted by shapes without names. He saw the same realization in Una's face. For her, it was worse. She was a scholar. To have truth found and then ripped away, to be made ignorant again by force. It was a violation of her very self. June stood up, his body moving before his mind had fully formed the plan. The old instincts, long dormant, kicked in. Survival. Evasion. "We're not here when they arrive," he said. "It is impossible." Una protested, but it was weak. "The storm. One crawler. They have a starship. They will track us. We have a 6-hour head start, and they think they're coming to deal with 2 curious civilians. They won't be in a rush. June was already moving to the common area, pulling open lockers. He tossed her a heavy, long-range survival pack. They'll look in orbit and on the main grids first. We go off-grid, into the deep canyons, the magnetic rock zones. We make them work for it. Una stood, holding the pack. She was trembling, but not with fear anymore. With a furious, desperate energy. The choice was before her. Succumb to the gentle, mind-wiping piece of the Accord, or run into a storm with a human veteran to protect a terrible truth. She looked at the data pad, at the image of the cruel, angular ship. It was evil, but it was true. She thought of the screaming voice from the log, a voice the Union had tried to silence forever. Someone had to remember. She slung the pack over her shoulders and met June's eyes. Where do we start? The storm was their ally. June guided the crawler not along the established survey paths, but down a steep, scree-covered slope into a labyrinth of canyons. The rain turned the ground into a treacherous slurry, and the vehicle slid the last few meters, slamming against a canyon wall with a jarring crunch. He didn't stop to check the damage. The noise would be lost in the wind. Una clutched her data pad, her knuckles white. She had copied the core files, the images, the audio logs, onto a tiny, shielded storage crystal, the kind used for preserving irreplaceable data. She slipped it into a sealed pocket inside her suit. The original pad she wiped clean, restoring its factory settings with a few quick commands. It was now just a blank device. A decoy. They will track the crawler's transponder, she said, her voice tense. Even powered down, it emits a maintenance ping. June was already opening the maintenance hatch under the dashboard. His large, calloused hands worked quickly in the cramped space. He found the small transponder unit, a black box with a single blinking green light. Without a word, he ripped it free from its connectors, the wires snapping. The light died. He then opened the crawler's fuel cell port, a risky move in the enclosed cabin. The sharp, chemical smell filled the air. He dropped the transponder into the shallow pool of viscous coolant at the bottom of the compartment. That should block the signal, he grunted, sealing the port. And if they scan for it, it'll look like it failed and corroded. Common fault in this weather. Una stared. His actions were not those of a surveyor. They were methodical, decisive, and utterly without hesitation. He was dismantling their tether to the world they knew. We need to move on foot from here, June said, pulling 2 high-density ration packs from the storage locker and handing her one. The canyon narrows up ahead. Goes into a region the initial orbital scan listed as magnetically chaotic. It'll mess with their scanners. He shouldered his pack, which held the laser drill, the borescope, and other tools that could now be seen in a new light, not as instruments of discovery, but of survival. He checked the charge on his suit's power cell and the small, solid fuel heater unit. Una did the same, her movements mimicking his with growing focus. The scholar was receding. The fugitive was emerging. They left the crawler, a silent hulk already being painted gray by the relentless rain, and entered the narrow slit in the canyon wall. The world became dark and close, the roar of the wind now a high whistle through stone tunnels. For hours, they walked. June set a punishing pace, but Una matched it, her Union-trained body pushed to its limits. He taught her without seeming to teach. He showed her how to step on the rocky, dry patches to avoid leaving clear prints in the mud. He pointed out overhangs where thermal scans might lose them. He spoke in short, clear sentences. See how the rock is layered here. It's full of iron. It'll scatter a sensor pulse. We stay close to this wall. When we rest, we do it under cover, not in the open. Even if it's just a deep shadow, conserve your suit power. Switch off everything non-essential. Light, comms, even the internal temperature regulator if you can stand it. You can reactivate it for short bursts to warm up. She listened and obeyed. The logic was undeniable. This was a new kind of protocol, a protocol for preserving truth instead of peace. During a brief stop under a rocky shelf, sipping nutrient paste from a tube, Una broke the silence. Where are we going, June SSI? We cannot outrun a starship forever. This planet is small. June looked at the dark, flowing water at the bottom of the gorge. There's an old survey base, from the first human landing before the Union oversight was fully set up. It was decommissioned, mostly scavenged, but it's deep in the magnetic zone. And more importantly, it might have something the Union doesn't, an old physical data terminal. One that can access a network not on the Union grid. Yuna understood. The human extranet. The fringe channels. She had heard of it. A messy, chaotic network where human traders, independent researchers, and free stations shared information with little oversight. It was the opposite of the orderly Union data streams. If we can get a signal out, June said, his voice low. Not the whole thing, just a fragment. The alloy signature. A second of that audio log. To someone, anywhere, who can ask a question. Once the question is asked, it's harder to erase the answer. It was a thin plan, a desperate one. But it was a plan. It was action. Yuna found she preferred the clarity of this desperate action to the numb terror of waiting for the mind wipe. A new sound cut through the constant rush of water and wind. A deep, resonant hum, vibrating through the very rock. They both froze, searchlights, brilliant and white, stabbed down from above, sweeping across the top of the canyon, hundreds of meters over their heads. The harmonious inquiry had arrived. The lights were not looking for them yet. They were illuminating the primary site, the cave with the wreck. They would find the crawler soon. June motioned sharply, and they pressed themselves deeper into the shadows of the overhang. He looked at Yuna. Her face was all hard angles in the reflected searchlight, her breath making small clouds in her cold suit. The fear was there, but it was pressed down, controlled. She gave him a sharp nod. The searchlights swept away, moving methodically. They had a little more time. The veteran and the scholar turned and moved deeper into the shaking dark. The deep hum of the starship became a constant background noise, a reminder that the sky was no longer safe. June and Yuna moved like ghosts through the bottom of the gorge. The magnetic interference was a physical sensation here, a tingling in their teeth and a faint static fuzz on their suits' internal displays. It was their only shield. They found the old base as the planet's long night was reaching its deepest point. It was less a base and more a scar. 3 domes, one collapsed completely, were half buried in a landslide. The human markings were faded, but the functional, blocky design was unmistakable. A dead power pylon leaned nearby like a skeletal tree. June approached with caution, his scanner set to detect motion or energy signatures. It showed only the whisper of residual radiation from old generators. Clear, he whispered, though with the ship's hum above, whispering felt pointless. The entrance to the least damaged dome was sealed with a manual wheel lock, rusted solid. June took a small vial of acidic solvent from his kit, a tool for cleaning mineral deposits from drill bits. He applied it to the rusted seam. It hissed, and after several long minutes of straining, the wheel shrieked and turned. The door opened with a groan of dying metal. Inside was a tomb of forgotten work. Cracked monitors, chairs overturned, and a fine layer of orange dust over everything. But in the center of the room sat a heavy, console-style data terminal. It was an old Mark III human model, built for durability with physical buttons and a thick glass screen. A thick cable, its insulation cracked, snaked from it into a hole in the floor, a hard line to a buried communications array. Yuna's eyes lit with a desperate hope. She went straight to it, brushing dust from the screen. "It has independent power," she said, pointing to a fat, rectangular battery unit still nestled in its housing. "A failsafe in case the main grid died. There may be a charge left." June kept watch at the cracked viewport, his eyes scanning the sliver of turbulent sky they could see. The searchlights were distant now, probing other sectors. They had not been followed. Not yet. A click, a hum, and then a dim, green glow filled the dark dome. The terminal was alive. The screen flickered, showing an ancient login prompt. Yuna's fingers flew across the keyboard. She bypassed security protocols with a series of commands she seemed to pull from deep memory, a mix of human coding and universal override sequences used by Union archivists. The screen changed, showing a simple, text-based menu. One option blinked, Low-band emergency relay. This is it, she breathed. It uses a different frequency. A physical squirt burst, not a continuous stream. It was for sending SOS signals through interference. It can reach the extranet relay at the edge of the system, if it's still active. June came to stand beside her. What do we send? She plugged the small data crystal into a dusty port on the terminal side. Files populated the screen. The image of the jagged ship, the alloy analysis, the audio log file, translated text scrolling beside it. Not all of it, June said. They'll trace a big data burst. And if someone gets everything at once, they might not believe it, might think it's a story. Yuna nodded, thinking hard. She was a curator of truth. She had to choose the right fragment, the one piece of evidence that would force a question. Her hands moved. She isolated two things. First, the alloy signature. With a simple, terrifying caption she typed herself. Warship hull composite. Préaccord. Source, Pilus 7. Then, she selected the calm, final voice from the audio log. Not the screams, not the orders for saturation. The resigned, fatalistic one. She trimmed it to the core. The voice rasped from the tinny terminal speaker, filling the dusty dome. We have broken their sky. They have broken our home. There are no winners here. Only the end. She attached the audio file to the image. She set the terminal to broadcast this small, potent package on a repeating loop, directed at the extranet relay. It would be a drip of poison into the galaxy's water supply. Once I initiate, they will detect the transmission pulse, even through the interference, Yuna said, her finger hovering over the final key. They will pinpoint this location. June looked out the viewport again, then back at her determined face. The scholar was gone. Here was a revolutionary. Do it, he said. She pressed the key. A low thrum vibrated through the floor as the buried array powered up. On the screen, a message flashed. Burst transmission sent. Repeating. They had done it. The truth was loose. The reaction from above was immediate. The deep hum of the harmonious inquiry changed pitch, becoming a sharper, angrier whine. The searchlights, distant moments before, swung as one, converging on their canyon. The ship was moving, fast. Time to go, June said. But he knew it was different now. They weren't just hiding. They had become a target that needed to be silenced. They burst from the dome into the night. They had taken only 3 running steps when the air above them turned white. Not with light, but with energy. A beam of brilliant blue plasma lanced down from the sky, silent and precise. It struck the old base. There was no explosion. There was a disintegration. The domes, the pylon, the terminal, the very rock they sat on, vaporized into a cloud of superheated gas and molten glass. The shockwave hit them like a giant's hand, throwing them forward into the mud at the edge of the gorge. June's ears rang. He rolled over, checking for Yuna. She was already pushing herself up, staring at the glowing, smoldering crater where the base had been. The Union wasn't just sanitizing. It was erasing. A smaller, darker shape detached from the larger ship above. A shuttle. It dropped towards the canyon like a stone. June grabbed Yuna's arm, pulling her up. The water, he shouted over the new roar of the shuttle's engines. They half ran, half slid down the steep bank into the icy, fast-moving river that cut through the canyon floor. The current seized them, pulling them into the dark. As the water closed over his helmet, June looked back. The shuttle settled on the smoking ruin, its landing lights painting the scene in stark, unforgiving white. They were not just fugitives now. They were evidence. And the galaxy was starting to ask why. The freezing water pulled them under. The current was a chaotic, roaring force in the pitch dark. June fought not against it, but with it, letting it carry him while trying to keep his head above the surface. He could not see Yuna, only feel the violent tug of the river. After what felt like an eternity, the canyon walls fell away. The river widened, slowing into a broad, shallow flow across a rocky plain. June dragged himself onto the stones, his suit heavy with water. He saw a shape a few meters downstream and stumbled towards it. It was Yuna, She was on her hands and knees, coughing up water inside her helmet. He helped her sit up. Above them, the sky was empty. The Harmonious Inquiry and its shuttle were gone from sight, but they both knew it was up there, listening, scanning. The plasma strike had been a statement. There would be no more warnings. "We need to keep moving," June said, his voice raw. "They'll scan the riverbanks." Yuna nodded, still coughing. She pointed a shaky finger away from the river, towards a field of massive, weathered stone pillars. "There. Sonic echoes in the pillars will confuse scanners." They ran, a staggered, exhausted dash across open ground. They reached the shadow of the first monolith just as a faint scanning beam, visible as a distortion in the rain, swept over the area they had just left. For 2 days, they hid and moved. They drank filtered rainwater and ate the dense ration paste. They did not speak much. There was nothing left to say. They had done the thing. Now they had to live with the consequences. If they could. On the third morning, sheltering in a dry crevice, Yuna's data pad, the blank, wiped one, chimed. It was receiving a weak, scattered signal on a general entertainment band. It was the human extranet news feed, bouncing off a passing freighter. A synthesized news reader's voice filled the crevice. Unverified data fragment causing vigorous debate across fringe networks. The so-called pilot fragment appears to show an unknown vessel and contains audio of a disturbing, unconfirmed nature. Union officials have dismissed it as an elaborate fabrication, a work of fiction created with outdated archival data. They stress that the concepts contained within are not only false but harmful to galactic harmony. June and Yuna looked at each other. The Union was doing what it always did, deny and discredit. But the newsreader continued. However, several independent xenolinguists have authenticated the language in the audio as a pre-Accord dialect, previously known only from stone fragments. The Xenohistorical Society of New Athena has formally requested that the Union Council release all findings from its routine geological survey on Pilus 7. And in a related note, there are widespread, unconfirmed reports of a sudden and total communications blackout on Pilus 7 itself. A small, tired smile touched Yuna's lips. They are asking questions. The sky above them darkened, not with clouds, but with the sleek, silent shape of the Harmonious Inquiry. It moved slowly this time with a terrible final purpose. It did not fire. Instead, a calm, amplified voice echoed across the landscape, speaking in perfect universal and then in Korean. "Kim June, Lee Yuna, this pursuit is over. You are confused and ill. You have been exposed to toxic historical radiation. It has affected your minds. We are here to help. Come to the light and you will be healed. You will be at peace." The words were soft, reasonable, offered hand. A return to the quiet, numb peace of ignorance. June felt a deep pull. The part of him that was so tired, the veteran who wanted the nightmares to end, wanted to believe it. He could just walk into the light and forget. Forget the ship, the screams, the truth of his own war. He looked at Yuna. Her face was streaked with dirt and exhaustion, but her eyes were clear. She had heard the offer of peace, and she was shaking her head. She held up the small data crystal, safe in its pocket over her heart. She was choosing the terrible truth over the beautiful lie. June made his choice. He stepped out from the crevice, into the open. But he did not walk towards the ship's waiting landing lights. He turned to face where he knew its main sensors were. Yuna stepped out beside him. He opened a general comms channel, his voice carrying to the ship and, just maybe, to any other receiver listening on the planet. "I am Kim June," he said, his voice strong now, not a whisper. "I am a veteran of the Quiet War. What I fought was not a minor border conflict. It was this." He gestured to the crystal in Yuna's hand. "It was the prohibited thing. They made us forget. They are trying to make us forget again." He was not speaking to the ship. He was speaking to the galaxy. Yuna spoke next, her scholar's voice ringing with conviction. "I am Lee Yuna, a servant of the Accord. Peace built on lies is not peace. It is a prison for the mind. We found a grave, and you would murder the memory of the dead to keep your quiet. We will not be quiet. The ship was silent for a long moment. Then, the calm voice returned, a hint of strain beneath it. You are unwell. We must insist. From the ship's underside, a different beam lanced down. A pale gold containment field, meant to stun and capture. But it never reached them. A new light split the sky. A violent white streak that ended in a thunderous crack above the harmonious inquiry. A ship, blocky and human, dropped out of orbit, its weapons hot. More followed. Freighters, old patrol crafts, even a few sleek courier ships. A ragged fleet emerging from the magnetic shadow of the planet's moon. The extranet fragment had been a rallying cry. The questions had brought answers. And some of those answers had come in ships. A chaotic comms channel erupted. Human voices, angry and determined. Back off, Union. You don't get to silence them this time. The harmonious inquiry hesitated. It was one ship against a mob, against a growing idea. June watched the standoff in the sky. He took Yuna's hand. It was not a gesture of romance, but of solidarity. Two witnesses standing together. The galaxy was shaking, not with weapons, but with a single resurrected word, spoken from a forgotten grave, now echoing everywhere. Remember. The harmonious inquiry powered down its weapons. Slowly, with great reluctance, it turned and began to climb towards the stars, leaving the planet behind on the rocky plain. The veteran and the scholar stood, hand in hand, watching the dawn break through the rain. The quiet was gone. In its place was something harder and more real. They had remembered, and now so would everyone else.